And here we are once again with that yearly challenge a film has to present to me. I do love film, and in this case I do love gaming, but the question is, sports.
If you miss a line in the game, you reset. You miss it on the track, you could die.
I know this track. I've raced it 1,000 times. That's what I'm talking about.
And today we have Gran Turismo, or I think technically it's like Gran Turismo based on a true story. It's like a tagline they sometimes throw on the poster or the trailer. Realize I don't really have any racing shirts, but I thought it'd be more clever and lazy if I had racing stripes. Huh? For anyone that doesn't know, Gran Turismo is like it's a racing game for PlayStation. Similar to how Xbox has Forza, like Forza Horizon. PlayStation has Gran Turismo. It's supposed to be a hyper-realistic racing simulation series of games that have only improved over time. Even though I like cool cars, sure. Racing games, I'm not gonna lie, I would play the hell out of some Need for Speed, Most Wanted when I was a kid, Carbon. The racing games have the capacity to be fun, but those of you that do like racing and having a simulation and the RPMs are realistic and the sound of the car and the look of the Ferrari and all this type of stuff, cool, more power to you. I'm more of a Mario Kart kind of guy. The game was made years ago. It's been a franchise for a while, and they, for like a marketing ploy between Nissan, or as they say in the movie, Nissan. Was it Nissan?
Welcome to Team Nissan.
Basically got this like idea where it's, hey, we're gonna have a contest for across the world to see who the best, fastest players are in the game world. Bring those people onto a real life, tracking course, train them, have them race each other in real cars. And then whoever does the best is the one person we will pick as the best Gran Turismo player and have them compete in like real life, real world racing for real, big time, real stuff. And we've seen this told time and time again, countless different ways, but now with the new context viewpoint of, it's a gamer boy, he said see you later boy, and now he's gonna be driving around in real cars. Here's the funniest and weirdest part about this for me. You know who directed Gran Turismo? Neil Blomkamp. What? So for those of you that don't know, this is the guy that brought us to District 9 back in 2009. We all love District 9, no question about that. He did Elysium, which was less well received, but I personally enjoyed Elysium. And then he did the one that was just a meme and now is very problematic because of the Ant-word and all this, but he did Chappie back in the day, but again, the Ant-word, popularity in the States, and then it was revealed they weren't really great people, right? So it's like, but Chappie was back in 2015? Now since then, Neil has done his own studio, I think called Oats, I believe is what it's called. You can find all these on YouTube. For years, him and some other creatives have been doing these short films that are all thematically similar to stuff like District 9 or like Elysium, because it's like dark, gritty, very high concept science fiction, sci-fi. He hasn't directed a full-length feature film since Chappie, and here we are almost a decade later, and he does Gran Turismo. Who approached him on this? Maybe he's a fan. He's a good director, and this film is directed well, but I'm just like surprised. You're like, who, what, when, where, why, how? Like all the questions I have. I have not watched a single interview, and I almost don't want to because I prefer the mystery to pervade this film of why did Neil do this. Star power. I didn't recognize the main lead. Archie Madekwe. He's been in a variety of other stuff before, but most notably, at least from my film and horror circles, he was Simon in Midsommar, who has arguably the worst death. Like the old blood eagle, huh? Then of course you have the star of the marketing, aside from our main lead, former driver turned racing coach, engineer, mechanic, a tough around the exterior guru, who then softens up a bit and becomes a father figure to our main character. Again, we've seen this before, but you have old David Harbour, who recently I think announced he's going to retire from acting because he's tired of being known as the Stranger Things guy. I don't blame him. If you're an actor who loves acting in a variety of roles, and you do one that blows up internationally and then all you're known for is that role when you want to be recognized for your other talents and roles, I would also think about taking a bit of a hiatus myself. So this was a Regal advertised for come check out an early access screening of Gran Turismo in our Screen X format. For those of you that don't know, I've only been in like 2 other Screen X movies, and it's just basically you have your screen and then you have 2 surrounding screens that are meant to be like almost like a VR headset in a way. It's meant to basically give you peripherals that aren't things you're supposed to focus on, but running by you on the sides, it's supposed to enhance your viewing experience and make it more immersive. I have now been to 3 Screen X films in my life. I believe it was Venom 2, There Will Be Carnage, The Batman, and now Gran Turismo. Only one of the 3 that I've seen worked properly. The first one, I get it. It was a test, and I think they gave us the tickets for free maybe, but after the beginning opening scene, they kind of shut down and the logo popped up and then the little like Windows restart screen stayed on there for like an hour. First screen, I can forgive because it was a test screen. Second one was The Batman, and that was, it worked fine. It was not throughout the entire movie. There's only some sequences that are like, they give you the extra oomph, and sure. This one, the side screens worked fine, but they screwed up the aspect ratio of the primary screen so that instead of having one full screen that would borderline seamlessly connect with the rest of the surrounding screens, the aspect ratio got messed up and there were 2 black bars on the left and right sides, like screen, black rectangles, and then the rest of the screens, which for me, if you're gonna do it right, and I will notice discrepancies. This one was pretty blatant, like that's not how it was supposed to look, obviously, and it interrupted the experience. You know, first world problems to the extreme degree, I'm aware, but like, come on, man. Anyway, the movie, right? The movie was pretty good. It was better than I thought it was going to be. Like I said, I don't care about racing. And usually when people take a concept like this into a movie, and you can tell from the trailer that it was going to be potentially cringy, because all the adults are like, oh, you know, you're wasting your life playing video games, and oh, you're going to just sit around and play games. What kind of career is that?
Must be a new experience for you, moving your legs.
Everybody in the first act is like, no, right now, this isn't a game, you see, this is the real world when you race cars. You gotta remember, this ain't your game and your hot pocket sitting in the corner of your mom's room or whatever. Like, yeah, there's some fat ass sitting in his parents' basement playing League of Legends and World of Warcraft all day. Sure, I guess most gamers are still out of shape, or like these little like noodle arm twinks, or heaven forbid, they're introverted and people give them anxiety. Games give people an escape. I'll get off that soapbox for a minute, but the patronization of it, I don't know. It made me think a lot of Ford versus Ferrari, which I think is a better film and a better racing film in general. But I will say, like, I love gaming, so it's cool to see that represented in, you know, a movie. And, you know, they do give accolades to the kids' skills, right? But again, it's impressive for a movie about sports, and in this case racing, to interest me in any degree. That speaks to the film and the filmmakers and the actors, so bravo there. I mean, yeah, it is just the story about how he enters in this contest, is good enough to qualify, then goes off to this camp. The whole first act is, you know, first that with his family, and his family being like, oh, you know, you gotta be more realistic about your career goals. Then he gets lucky and gets into this, goes off, and he races his fellow teammates, and there's the usual, like, oh, he has friends, but then there's the one racer who's like, oh, you think you're hot shit, huh? Wins, and he goes off to the big leagues, and he's doing real world racing and real world circuits. And I do like how it's the realistic story. There's some dramatization, of course, but he places fairly low and doesn't even finish some races and throughout his career, and then he gets better and better as time goes on, dedicates himself to both the athletic side while also still embracing the gaming side of this whole thing. And then, you know, they highlight his big wreck and then the whole thing to the final race and being able to qualify for the podium and set a landmark precedent. It's definitely a feel-good story. Like, it's if you're looking for borderline underdog but overall feel-good sports video game tie-in, heavily sponsored movie type of deal with some faces you might know that'll make this an enjoyable little heartfelt experience, then yeah, you're in for a good time. The racing scenes are good. I just wish they didn't cut away from it so much. When you get into the whole and like you're like, you know, going around people and there's cool shots happening. If you stay on those shots and you let the intensity crank and ramp up, I think it's more effective than being like, cut away to inside the cab, cut away to someone else watching, cut away from the... Just stop cutting away so much. There were some sequences where, like, when he's gaming, it's like, oh, let me pretend I'm in a real race car. When he's in a real race car, trying to de-stress, he's like, let me get in the headspace of, oh, I'm just at home playing a game. One trope they started to do that I'm glad they didn't do too much throughout the whole thing, there's a sequence, like, early on in the film where they evade the cops and these big, like, things come up on screen where it's like, cops evaded, trophy achieved, achievement unlocked, and it got really obnoxious for a few seconds. Luckily, they veer away from that, and in Act 2 and 3, it's more like as he's racing, you see the little, like, first, second, third, fourth player icon pop up above his car, or like you might see, like, the racing dotted line as he's driving in front of him, and they'll have, like, some minor video game overlays, but it's never too intrusive throughout the whole film. It reminds you that it's a video game movie, because I think Act 2 and 3 kind of forget that it is a bit. Acting is great. Even when the cringy lines are delivered by the actors, I mean, they're delivered, fairly well.
You miss a line in the game, you reset. You miss it on the track, you could die.
It's great seeing David Harbour play David Harbour. Our lead's not perfect, but I was rooting for him. I think a lot of what weighed this film down for me was the Act 1 cringe fest, where it's just again and again and again, it's the same lines of dialogue of these adults being like, all right, now this isn't a video game, don't forget, I bet you aren't used to this or the real world. See this thing called a car? This is a car with real rubber. You just have your little joysticks at home, don't you? You gotta remember, this is actual they treat these kids like they're literally just in the room all day, not interacting with the world at all. There are some people, not to toot my own horn here, that are very well adjusted, socially acclimated adults who know how to be at home and play video games, but also can step out of the house and touch grass, right? And these adults are just so patronizing. This ain't no game. This ain't a game. This is the real world, Mr. Man, little missy. Alright, cool. I get it. I fucking get it. You're gonna have this happen, but it is predictable. How it's gonna end. It's still how it's told, well enough. What I assume is a very accurate, if not, more dramatic way. It's tropey, it's dramatized, it's predictable, so there's all that type of stuff. I think the big thing for me is this film isn't really anything extraordinary. I think it's also funny how in the movie, because they're trying to stay relevant with PlayStation, they are all using PlayStation 5s for a movie about a contest in a game that came out back, I think, more for the PS3, right? It was like PlayStation 3 when this contest happened, so that was funny to me. And there were some moments where the emotional bits did kind of hit a bit. I felt myself getting a tiny bit misty-eyed. The highs and victories of winning, the lows and losses of defeat and near-death experiences. For a guy who directed gritty sci-fi horror films in the past, I mean, he did a good job with this film, but at the same time, there's not a whole lot of craziness you can do with a film like this besides what can we do during racing scenes. Overall, I enjoyed myself a bit more than I thought I would. Mostly I was laughing at the first act shenanigans, which I do think the first act brings down the film in a major way, but once Act 2 and Act 3 get going, it was fun, it was exciting sometimes, it was enjoyable, it was a cool watch that occasionally got the blood pumping and got the adrenaline going a little bit, and I wouldn't recommend against seeing it. I just don't know if I would say you have to see this film. You know what, I'll give it a high 3 out of 5. I'll give it a high 3 out of 5. It is above average. It's not great. It's not fantastic. There are some people that I'm sure will disagree. I think for the most part, critics didn't like it. I just think it just plays it safe. It's a good, decent film that has some above average qualities to it. I'm a bit biased because I like Sony, PlayStation, and video gaming, and David Harbour. I would still say if you want to see a really, really good racing film, go see something like Ford versus Ferrari. It just springs to mind in more recent memory. That's all I gotta say about Gran Turismo, based on a true story. But thank you guys and gals so much for watching. Stay tuned for the next episode, whatever movie I review. And goodbye, travelers.